at number 5, the Sally House, Atchison, Kansas. Built in the mid-1800s in Atchison, Kansas, the Sally House is believed to be haunted by a little girl named Sally, who died in the home during an appendicitis surgery. However, it was in the mid-1990s that Sally's story began to receive both local and national attention, when the owners at the time, Tony and Deborah Pickman, began noticing strange occurrences in the home, including attacks on Tony, unexplained voices, and burnt finger marks. After investigations were conducted by the Kansas Paranormal Group, it was discovered that Sally wasn't the only ghost haunting the house, but there was also a middle-aged woman. However, one paranormal believer has an explanation for the second ghost. They believe that this is in fact Sally's mother, who died not long after Sally passed away. She had attacked the doctor and died, with the spirits remaining in the home. The mother is said to still be grieving the loss of her child, and is the one who is said to attack visitors. However, Sally is said to be a happy ghost and tries to play with children that move in the house. Other paranormal experiences in the house include pictures being turned upside down, floating objects, disembodied voices, apparitions, toys being thrown around, and doors opening, closing, locking, and unlocking. The house is now standing vacant, with nobody wanting to live in the home. However, the house offers self-guided tours in September and October, as well as guided day tours and special overnight visits. In at number 4, the Myrtles Plantation, St. Francisville, Louisiana. The Myrtles Plantation is a historic home and former antebellum plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana. Built back in 1796 by General David Bradford, the plantation is reported to be one of America's most haunted homes. The plantation house is rumored to be on top of an ancient Indian burial ground, with it currently being a bed and breakfast and offering historical and mystery tours for ghost hunters. The plantation is said to be home to at least 12 different ghosts, with it often being reported that 10 murders occurred in the home. However, historical records only indicate the murder of William Winter. William Drew Winter was an attorney who lived in the plantation from 1865 until 1871, until he was shot by a stranger. After being shot, it is said that he staggered inside the house and died trying to climb the stairs. He died on the 17th step, and to this day, visitors as well as employees still hear his dying footsteps. Jumping ahead to 2002, Unsolved Mysteries filmed a segment at the plantation, and according to host Robert Stack, the production crew experienced technical difficulties during the production. It was also featured on the TV series Ghost Adventures, as well as on the series Most Terrifying Places in America. In at number 3, House of Death, New York. On 14th West 10th Street in Greenwich Village in New York stands a picturesque home, which is now known as the House of Death, with it having a less than cute history. Since its construction back in the 1850s near the start of the Civil War, 22 people have reported to have died in the home, and according to the New York Post, some of their spirits have never left. Some residents over the years have reported sightings of Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain, who lived in the building between 1900 and 1901. Sightings of the author have been reported on the first floor of the home near the staircase, with him said to be wearing a white suit. Allegedly, the spirit stated, "My name is Clemens and I has a problem here, I gotta settle." A few years later, after the sighting, the house was converted into a 10-unit apartment building. However, the hauntings did not cease. According to the New York Post, actress Jan Bryant Bartell and her husband moved into the apartment on the top floor in 1957 and immediately felt a monstrous moving shadow that loomed up behind her. After she left the home, she published a memoir where she wrote about feeling a brush against the back of her neck and smelling a rotting odor throughout the apartment. She went on to state that on one particular occasion she saw a vision of a man and she reached out to him. She stated that she touched a substance without substance, chilly damp, diaphanous as March mist or a cloud of ether. Coming in at number 2, Lavetta Mansion, New Orleans, Louisiana. Located on 1140 Royal Street in New Orleans is the Lavetta Mansion, a home which was reported to be one of the most haunted places in the world. Some may also be familiar with this house as it was depicted on American Horror Story Coven. Now, this home is where slaves were tortured at the hands of Delphine Lalaurie. Born Marie Delphine McCarty, but more commonly known as Madame Lalaurie, she was a New Orleans socialite and serial killer who, like I said, tortured and murdered slaves in her home. Accounts of Lalaurie's treatments of slaves between the years of 1831 to 1834 are mixed. However, Harriet Martineau, writing in 1838, claimed that enslaved people kept by Lalaurie were observed to be singularly haggard and wretched. However, in public appearances, Lalaurie was seen to be generally polite to them. Now, everything changed when a fire broke out in the home on April 10, 1834, which began in the kitchen. When the police were called and the fire marshals arrived, they found the cook chained to the stove by her ankle, with her later stating that she had started the fire as an attempt to end her life. As reported in the New Orleans Bee of April 11, 1834, bystanders responding to the fire attempted to enter the quarters of the enslaved people to ensure that everyone had been evacuated. Upon being refused the keys by the Lalauries, the bystanders broke down the doors to the quarters and found, I quote, 7 slaves, more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by their neck with their limbs apparently stretched. When the discovery was made and the news broke out, a mob of local citizens attacked the Lalauries' residence and demolished and destroyed everything upon which they could lay their hands. Now, the original mansion occupied by Lalaurie did not survive, with the mansion on the corner of Royal Street, which is commonly referred to as the Lalaurie Mansion, not being the same building inhabited by Lalaurie. Despite that, many believe that the ground itself is still haunted. And finally, coming in at number 1, Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, Massachusetts. First and foremost, Lizzie Borden was an American woman who was the primary suspect in the 1892 axe murders which took place at the home in Fall River, Massachusetts. The victims were Lizzie's father and her stepmother, with her being ultimately acquitted of the murders. Now, this case received a huge amount of attention across the United States, and following her release from jail where she had been held during the trial, Lizzie opted to remain in the same area where the deaths occurred, despite facing ostracism from other residents. Lizzie ultimately spent the remainder of her life in Fall River before passing away of pneumonia at the age of 66. The Lizzie Borden house is of course the home where the Borden family lived, with it being located on 230 2nd Street in the city of Fall River. From 1874 to 1892, the house was the property of Andrew Borden, Lizzie's father, who was a member of Fall River High Society. After Lizzie's trial and ultimate acquittal, she bought another home located on 7 French Street that she named Maplecroft. This is where she remained until her death. Now, as of today, the Borden house operates as a bed and breakfast, and it has been doing so since 1996. It is currently owned by Martha McGinn, whose grandparents purchased the home back in 1948. According to Martha, the room where Lizzie's stepmother was found murdered is the most requested room of the bedrooms at the B&B, which is incredibly sick and twisted.
Number 5 on this list is the Los Feliz murder house. This house is definitely not the one that you'd want to be purchasing, folks. We are dealing with a full-on murder house with this one. Rocket Holmes says, on December 6, 1959, cardiologist Harold Perelson murdered his wife with a hammer, then killed himself in their beautiful Spanish Revival home in Los Feliz, California. After the infamous murder-suicide, the home was sold but never lived in. In fact, the interior wasn't cleaned out for years following the incident, preserving that night in time and adding to the home's creepy aesthetic. Trespassers in the past have reported finding old magazines and books, canned food, and cleaning supplies. Rumor has it that there was even unwrapped presents sitting under a Christmas tree left standing in one of the rooms. Today, the house is stripped completely to its studs, a perfect starting point for anybody looking to remodel the home's 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and 3rd floor ballroom. However, while the Los Feliz murder house is for sale, it may be difficult to purchase. The seller wants cash or hard money offers and may offer seller financing. So for just the low price of a ton of cash money, you can purchase a completely stripped down murder house. Yeah, I don't think so, guys. Even the seller is weird here, wanting cash for the home. Like, everything about this house just screams creepy and haunted, and not the place that I'd want to live in. Number 4 on this list is the Dakota. The Dakota is witness to one of the most heinous crimes of our time. Rocket Holmes says, New Yorkers may recognize this historic Central Park apartment building's iconic mix of architectural style, while Beatles fans recognize it because of its history. Not only was it the residence of John Lennon and Yoko Ono, it was also the place where Lennon was fatally shot by Mark David Chapman in 1980. Throughout the building's existence, residents and staff have claimed to see the ghosts of a little girl, a crying lady, and Lennon himself. However, supposed hauntings and an alleged curse won't keep buyers away from the luxurious 9-room apartment for sale inside the building. The residence features 12-foot ceilings, original moldings, and city views from floor to ceiling windows. You may even have a famous neighbor. Past residents include Laurel Bacall, Judy Garland, and Bono. Yoko Ono still lives in the Dakota today. But even if you love the apartment and can afford the $10 million price tag, there's one thing that may keep you from moving in: the co-op board. Upon receiving your application and background check results, this group of people chooses whether you can live in the Dakota or not, and they are apparently scarier than any spirit haunting the building. The board has a history of being choosy and has rejected such celebrities as Madonna, Alex Rodriguez, Cher, and Billy Joel. Yeah, so even though you can buy this home, if you are super rich, there's also the board factoring into this, and apparently they're pretty picky. Like if Madonna can't seem to get an invite, then I highly doubt they're going to be opening the doors for me anytime soon. Either way, $10 million is a hefty price tag for a place as haunted as this one. I'd much rather travel the world with $10 million than get haunted by the ghost of a little girl or John Lennon himself. Number 3 on this list is the Priestley House. The Priestley House is one of our classic old homes that's just literally haunted. It was built all the way back in 1852 in Canton, Mississippi. It is a beautiful home on the outside and in, but it's host to a lot of paranormal characters. Our main characters at this home are the original owners of the place: Dr. James Priestley and his wife Susan Priestley. Both of them died in this home many years ago under mysterious circumstances. Nowadays, the new tenants of this house, whoever they may be, all report things falling and objects flying all over the place. They've even seen the ghosts of 2 people who claim to be Dr. James and Susan. They're always causing havoc and scaring those who live here. It seems as if they believe they are the rightful owners of this house and nobody should be allowed to stay in it even though they've passed on. It hasn't stopped people from trying to live here up until this point, but pretty much everybody who goes here eventually leaves soon after based on how haunted it is. I would recommend setting up camp in another home if I was you. Number 2 on this list is the Pink Palace. Well, I'll be honest folks, I think the name here, the Pink Palace, is enough to turn me off from buying the place, but that's just me. Rocket Homes says, purchase this light pink home and you might also get your very own guardian. That's because the ghost that haunts this home is protective of the property and those who live there. Believed to be a previous owner named Avery, the spirit has appeared to residents just before bad things happen in the home, like a fire in the kitchen or a cinder block crashing through a window. Both times, Avery possibly saved their lives. Along with this added benefit, the home itself boasts 6 bedrooms, original woodwork, stained glass windows, and an in-ground pool. And you won't have to worry about waterproofing the basement. That was done this year. So in this rare case, the haunting is actually a bit of a benefit. This haunting may actually save your life if you purchase this house and something inexplicably goes wrong. However, you also need to live in a place called the Pink Palace. And if you guys hadn't guessed, it's pretty freaking pink on the outside. In fact, I don't think it could get more pink if it even tried. So I guess we kind of have a mixed bag on this one. And finally, number 1 on this list is One Lavetta Place. Believe it or not, this home is literally legally haunted. Rocket Homes says, located on a tree-lined dead-end street in Nyack, New York, One Lavetta Place is as famous as its past celebrity owners, including director Adam Brooks, singer Ingrid Michaelson, and rapper Matisyahu. The home gained notoriety when the New York Supreme Court declared it legally haunted in 1991. The ruling was the result of Stambovsky vs. Ackley case in which homebuyer Jeffrey Stambovsky sued seller Helen Ackley over not disclosing the haunting prior to the sale and fought to rescind his offer. The court ruled in Stambovsky's favor and the home made history. While there's not been any reported hauntings in recent years, perhaps you'll experience the paranormal activity the Ackleys publicly claimed to have had decades ago. Before selling the home, Helen and her family had reported multiple incidents of poltergeists from the Revolutionary War shaking the beds, slamming doors, and leaving gifts. That's actually insane, guys. A house gets declared haunted in the court of law. Like, that seems like something from a movie. Now, this is going to be an expensive purchase. Considering it is the first home ever to be legally classified as haunted, a lot of people want to own it, meaning that the price is pretty high. But if you had the money, then you could in fact purchase it. Why you'd want to have a bunch of Revolutionary War ghosts slamming doors and bothering you all the time is beyond me, but I guess to each their own, right? 5 on this list is Tranquil Sanatorium in British Columbia. Tranquil Sanatorium has quite an extensive and tragic history to it, which has caused its walls to be the home to many undead spirits. A sanatorium, if you weren't familiar, is an establishment which has the sole purpose of housing those with long-term illnesses and is often associated with tuberculosis. The one that we're talking about right now is no different. It was built in 1907 as a facility to treat people with tuberculosis. However, it didn't stay like this for very long. The purpose of the facility eventually changed to become an insane asylum. It acted as this mental institute for a while until finally becoming abandoned in the late 1980s. Due to its deep history with death, disease, mental illness, it's no wonder that the Tranquil Sanatorium is now deeply haunted. The layout of this facility screams something out of a Stephen King book. It has several buildings that are connected by poorly lit underground tunnels. The building itself looks all too eerie from the outside as well, with dirty cream-colored walls that have seen far better days as rot and mold slowly devour them. Visitors of this place report feeling extremely uneasy. A common note for most people that visit is the presence of orbs, strange balls of light that flutter throughout the building and then disappear. Some people have reported seeing a ghostly apparition on the 6th floor. This ghost takes the form of a woman not older than 30. She appears to be crying and screaming. The tunnels are said to be particularly haunted. People have reported screams coming from nowhere, flashes of movement, menacing and animalistic groans that make you feel as if somebody is right behind you. Children can also be heard playing every now and again in some of the more open areas of the building. Clearly, this place's dark history has impacted it greatly, and just because physical humans decided to abandon it in the 80s doesn't mean that it was truly abandoned for good. Number 4 on this list is the Firkins House. The Firkins House is part of Fort Edmonton Park, which, you guessed it, is located in Edmonton, Alberta. Fort Edmonton Park is a little tourist attraction that has buildings from 1885, 1905, and 1920 to represent the homes of the time. One of the houses is the Firkins House. This home is interesting because during my research, I couldn't find any particular evidence of wrongdoings or tragic events at this home. In fact, for the most part, it seems like a pretty normal house. People have lived there before and no harm has befell them, but it seems that after they moved out and the home was donated, that's when things started to go a little bit haywire. There are reportedly 3 ghosts or demons that haunt this home, each one scarier and more dangerous than the next. The first one is the ghost of a beautiful floating woman who is dressed in all white. People have said that they've spotted her in the windows of the home looking out at them or slowly drifting throughout the living room. The second one is the ghost of a little boy. The boy will appear to certain people looking extremely ill. It is currently unknown if this boy died in and around the area or what disease he is suffering from, but it is said that he resides in the home with the woman in white. The third being is by far the scariest of all 3. A ventriloquist dummy that will appear in the home or in the cupboards. This thing can move all by itself and talk by itself. It is very similar to the popular horror franchise Chucky, and it's said by some to be seeking to harm the living. I'm not sure if the ghost of the ventriloquist has taken over this dummy or if the dummy has taken on its own persona, but I definitely do not want to go anywhere where the primary residence is a demon puppet. Number 3 on this list is the 5 Fishermen Restaurant. This is a restaurant in Halifax, Nova Scotia, known for its exceptional oysters and also its ghostly inhabitants. The ground that this restaurant sits on wasn't always utilized for serving up fish and chips though. In fact, it has a very long history. In the early 1800s is when the building went up, and for a long time it acted as the town's only school. Nothing ghoulish or demonic about that. However, at around the turn of the century, the school moved and the building took on a new purpose. It became the mortuary for Halifax and made its dealings with the dead. Now, not every mortuary is going to become haunted, but this one had quite a lot to deal with over the years. In 1912, the unsinkable ship, the Titanic, sunk. It sunk roughly 640 kilometers off of the eastern shores of Canada, and therefore the closest places to assist with the rescue was these eastern provinces. Halifax acted as the leader in these rescue processes, and because of that, the mortuary had an onslaught of bodies of people whom had died on the ship. 5 years after that tragedy, Halifax incurred one of their own with the massive Halifax explosion. This was where a munitions ship exploded and it killed roughly 2,000
1,000 people just like that. This mortuary served as the primary designation for both of these incidents, and due to the unnatural deaths here, it makes sense that some spirits have clung on. Guests and employees alike have reported seeing ghosts all over this mortuary that turned restaurant. One of the dishwashers reported running out of the restaurant when he looked up from what he was doing and was staring directly at a ghost-like specter. The restaurant has attempted to have serious renovations done. However, I don't think that any amount of structural changes will get these spirits to rest for good. Number 2 on this list is the Frank Slide. Now, even though the Frank Slide sounds like it could be a fun, popular dance move that takes over TikTok for a few weeks, it is far more morbid than that. On April 29th in 1903, in the mining town of Frank, which at that time was part of the Northwest Territories, but it is now a section of Alberta, there was a horrible tragedy. 110 million tons of limestone and rock came tumbling down in one of Canada's biggest landslides ever. This fell onto part of the town of Frank. Frank was located right next to Turtle Mountain, which after extensive mining had grown unstable. On April 29th, it all came crashing down and claimed the lives of 70 to 90 people. It is still to this day Canada's most deadly landslide to ever occur in history, and was a horrible tragedy that can only remind us how fleeting life can be. I think the craziest part about this landslide as well is that it wasn't just miners who were killed. Their wives, their families, all of them died at the hands of the Frank Slide. The remains of these bodies were never recovered either, as the damage from the slide was far too devastating. Where all of this happened is now a section of a town called Crow's Nest Pass, and over a century later, the ghosts of the dead still haunt the area. This place is somewhere where visitors have reported feeling very unsafe. They say that the overall feelings of uneasiness are almost too much to bear and that they have to leave. Cries, howls, screams, this can all be heard late at night as you're trying to sleep. Lanterns will be seen in the night walking around at the hands of unknown apparitions. It is basically a full ghost town of people who never deserved to die in the first place, all wanting to get a second just to feel their lives again as they were so unfairly ripped away from them. Definitely one of Canada's most horrific tragedies, and now home to one of its most haunted locations. Number 1 on this list is the Banff Springs Hotel. This hotel is located in Banff, Alberta, and is truly one of the creepiest places that I've ever read about. Now, first off, I want to note the hotel itself looks gorgeous on the outside. The beautiful nature it is surrounded by is stunning, and the hotel gives me some serious Harry Potter Hogwarts vibes. However, when I say that this place is surrounded by nature, I really mean it. It is totally out on its own, with no other buildings in sight at all. The secluded site has been around for 132 years and has housed its fair share of visitors. Some of these visitors have had some incredible stays. I mean, when you look it up online, the hotel has a 4.7 Google rating, so I mean, it's pretty freaking good. Some of the guests, though, they never checked out. In the 1920s, a couple was set to have their wedding at this hotel. On the day of the ceremony, though, the bride, while she was walking down one of the hotel's beautiful marble staircases, tripped and fell, smacking her head on her descent and dying on the spot. This bride's spirit is one of the most notable sightings people have had when they're staying at this hotel. It's said that they often see a phantom in a wedding dress ascending and descending the stairs very quickly. She's also been seen in the ballroom dancing alone, potentially dreaming of the dance that she wanted so desperately to have with the husband that she never got to marry. In 1975, a longtime bellman of the hotel, Sam, died there. Since then, sightings of Sam have been pretty consistent. One story details how 2 women lost their room key and called the front desk to go and get it. The front desk person sent someone to go and open their room for these ladies. When that person had got there, though, the ladies were already in the room and said that another bellman had let them in. They described Sam to a T when they spoke about the bellman who helped them out. Instances like this have occurred time and time again at the hotel, with many people believing his spirit is still working there. Finally, with this hotel, you have room 873. Room 873 is rumored to be the home of a gruesome murder. One evening, a family was staying there, and the father, for some unknown reason, lost his mind, murdering his family and himself. After completely refurbishing the room, the hotel put it back in service, but now people who have stayed there report hearing the screams and the cries as if they were still dying. If you have to stay at this hotel, definitely avoid room 873.
In at number 5, we have Myrtles Mansion. The Myrtles Mansion is believed to have been built sometime between 1840 and 1850. There is a lot of mystery around the home and the different tales of what has happened here. In 1892, a man bought the home for him, his wife, and their 3 children. Once they moved into the home, the neighbors neighbors did not see them. They wanted to wait for them to settle in before going to introduce themselves. After a few weeks passed and they still didn't see the family, one neighbor went in to investigate the home. She saw a woman dressed in white at the second floor window. She did not move, she just stared at her. She went back the next day to see if there had been any change. She saw the woman again in the same place. She repeatedly checked in on the home, but on the 10th day she called the police as the figure did not move in any of the time that had passed. The police broke down the door to investigate. They found each family member dressed in white hanging from the staircase. The figure that she had seen all of those times was the wife hanging in front of the window. They had been hanging there for several weeks. There is folklore that the house is the original location of the witch Bloody Mary. They say the land is cursed and anyone who lives there will perish. The house remained empty for the rest of its years. It attracted ghost hunters. One woman claimed that she was on the second floor when she heard a loud group people on the third floor. When she went to ask them what was happening, she found she was alone in the home. The voices stopped and no one was on the third floor. The house was demolished in 2015 due to growing fears from the surrounding area. The home had been empty since the 1930s due to fear of what had happened here. If the folklore is true, any home built on the land will also carry the curse. In at number 4, S.K. Pierce Mansion. Sylvester Pierce was a wealthy businessman from Massachusetts. He started his business S.K. Pierce & Sons Furniture Company. The company was extremely successful for the family. In the late 1880s, Pierce decided he should build a mansion befitting his fortune. The mansion he built was a marvel for its time. The home was 7,000 square feet with 10 bedrooms. It took 16 months and 100 men to build this home. The family moved in swiftly as the grand home was completed, but their celebrations didn't last long when his wife Susan fell down the staircase a few weeks after moving in. She sustained many injuries but did not die from the fall. She did die from a bacterial illness she got in one of her wounds. After a year of mourning, Pierce remarried Ellen. This was widely talked about as she was 30 years younger than him. Pierce passed away in 1888, leaving behind his new wife and the 2 sons they had together and his son from the previous marriage. When Ellen passed, the sons argued constantly over who would take the home and business. The Great Depression destroyed the business, leaving only the mansion to decide. Eventually it was given to the youngest son. The mansion went through hard times as the family lost the fortune. Edward decided to turn the mansion into a boarding home. The home was used for drinking, gambling, and other activities people wanted to do in secret. There were even a number of murders that occurred. One woman was strangled in one of the second floor rooms by another boarder. A Finnish immigrant burned to death in the master bedroom in 1963. There is also another story of a young boy who drowned in the basement when he ran off from his family. Since these days, the house has been regarded as haunted. There is no shortage of people who has passed here. There are also claims a dark entity inhabits the basement and may have been the cause of the young boy wandering off. Guests have experienced voices talking to them as they sleep, furniture moving without anyone being in the room, as well as shadow people caught in the corner of guests' eyes. The house is now open for ghostly tours, but no one may stay the night as it is considered too dangerous. In at number 3, the Lemp Mansion in St. Louis, Missouri. The Lemp Mansion was built in 1890 in St. Louis. It was originally owned and built by William Lemp for his growing family. Lemp's father, Adam Lemp, was a German man who moved to the US in 1839. He became very successful when he opened a grocery and started to produce and sell authentic German lager. All things seemed to be going well for the Lemp family. Adam passed down his company to his son, William Sr. William went on to expand and grow the Western Brewery Company started by his father. He married his wife in 1861 and they moved into their new home in 1890. They had 4 children together, all boys who went on to work for the company. It was their youngest son, Frederick, who he had hoped to groom to inherit the entire company. In 1901, Frederick died due to heart failure from complications of his diseases. William Sr. became depressed from this. He lost his will to work. He slowly declined. His family's effort to console him did nothing to bring him back. In 1904, William Lemp took his own life by gunshot. With 2 tragedies in the family, they still kept going to try and recover from their losses, but there was still more to come from them. A few years later, his wife developed and passed from cancer, leaving the children, the home, and the company to run. William Jr. took over the company in his father's absence. He married, and they had 1 son, William III. Jesus. A few years later, she filed for divorce. She won custody of their son. The company also took a hit during the Prohibition when they had to shut down. They had to sell their trademark and the brewery complex was sold at auction. William struggled to deal with all of his immense loss. He did not see a way to recover all he had lost. He took his life in the same room as William Sr. had all those years prior. The house is said to now be haunted by the Lemp family and all of their tragedies. In at number 2, we have Hotel Cecil in Los Angeles, California. Hotel Cecil, or Stay on Main in LA, is probably one of the most well-known haunted locations. apparitions. While it's not a house, it is a home for many people, as the building is not only a hotel but a residence. The hotel became the center of the Netflix documentary The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel, which looked into the disappearance of Elisa Lam. The hotel opened in 1924. It was designed to be a high-end hotel for those traveling on business. The hotel quickly fell from the image they initially had. They advertised monthly and more permanent rates, but now offer as short as hourly. Within the first 10 years of the hotel being open, many lost souls checked into the hotel, who were never planning to check out. The first incident occurred in 1927, 3 years after opening. Guest Percy Cook had taken his own life. His wife had left him, taking their child. 4 years later, a man was found in his room after ingesting poison. Within the following 3 years, 2 more people took their lives. This quickly gained the hotel a dark reputation. People seemed to be drawn to the hotel as their final resting place. From 1937, the passings became more violent. People's lives started being taken by others. It was said all of the tragedies had cursed the hotel. Since 1937, 14 more people have passed away at the hotel. It is even rumored that in the case of Elisa Lam, she may have experienced hauntings in the hotel before she disappeared. There was footage of her in a lift performing what is thought to be a ritual where you invite spirits to join you. This was the last anyone would ever see of her. She was later found in one of the water tanks on the roof. Could this have been connected to the ritual, or maybe she saw something else during her stay? And finally, at number 1, we have Jean Harlow House, Los Angeles, California. When Jean Harlow was 18, she married Paul Byrne and moved into her famous Hollywood home. Jean was an actress famous for her roles in Double Whoopee and The Saturday Night Kid. She was seen as the latest blonde bombshell. Her personal life, however, would never be as successful as her acting career. Her marriage to Paul was her second. She married for the first time when she was only 16 years old. Her marriage to Paul was surprising to the public. He was 22 years older than her and not considered to be attractive. Their marriage only lasted 2 months before ending in tragedy. Paul Byrne had been married previously to Dorothy Millett. Paul hadn't spoken of Dorothy for years. His secrets finally caught up to him when he was found by his butlers deceased in his bedroom. He had a bullet wound through his head and a letter left next to him explaining why he ended his life. Authorities recovered the note and ruled the death by his own hands, but the staff pointed the fingers to Dorothy. She had visited him a day earlier. Jean had no knowledge of this. The police went to interrogate Dorothy only to find she had jumped from her hotel balcony. Jean sold and left the home after the incident. 5 years later, in 1937, Jean was on set filming Saratoga. She was found in her dressing room, passed out on the floor. She had suffered from kidney failure and died at the age of 26. In 1983, a hairstylist named J.C. Bring bought the former home. At the time, he was with Sharon Tate. Tate often stayed in the home. As most of us know, Sharon Tate also met an horrific end. She was a victim to Charles Manson while pregnant in 1969. Many people believe the house is cursed. Before her passing, Sharon Tate was questioned about the home. She was questioned in an interview about the suspected hauntings. She did experience some paranormal activity during her time there. She told them that she saw a ghostly man in her bedroom. She believed it to be Paul Byrne. She saw a second figure tied to the staircase. She said the second figure had a slit on their throat. She said it almost looked like her. Tate called it a premonition. Could Byrne have been trying to warn her? Either way, we know that the home houses the spirits of those who have passed there.